Humanity is racing to make machines that are much, much smarter than us. We're racing to replace ourselves as the smartest creature on the planet. And that's kind of a crazy thing to be doing on its face. And if you look at the technical details about how we don't know how to make these AIs care about us, the most likely outcome if we do this is that we die, not because they hate us, but because they don't care about us at all. I'm worried about these companies making AIs that can make smarter AIs that can make smarter AIs, leading to recursive self-improvement that could kill literally everybody on this planet, and I'm worried that this could happen inside of 3 years. If you look at why these guys are racing ahead anyway, they'll also just tell you that, right? Elon has said that he didn't want to be in this business, but he realized he either had to be a spectator or a participant, and he would rather be involved if it's going to happen with or without him.
From my standpoint, from the XAI team standpoint, we have a choice of being a spectator or a participant.
A lot of these guys use the excuse of, I have to be in this horrible race. Like, yes, the technology I'm building with my own hands has a good chance of killing you and destroying everything we all know and love. But I have to be in this race because if I don't do it, the next guy will do it worse.
3 years until recursive self-improvement wipes everybody out, and the people racing to build it admit the thing might kill us all, but they swear they have to keep running because the other guy might be worse. Nate Soares was inside Google when DeepMind got bought. He tried to stop this from the inside, then wrote a book about why we are already too late. Here's what he told Peter McCormack.
Humanity is racing to make machines that are much, much smarter than us. We're racing to replace ourselves as the smartest creature on the planet. And that's kind of a crazy thing to be doing on its face. And if you look at the technical details about how we don't know how to make these AIs care about us, the most likely outcome if we do this is that we die, not because they hate us, but because they don't care about us at all. And they go off and, turn the whole world into data centers and use up all the resources that we were using to grow food.
And was mythos the first kind of warning sign of approaching something that is a little bit more than humanity can handle?
I mean, if you were paying attention, ChatGPT was a warning sign. If you were paying attention, the attention is all you need paper was a warning sign. But this is another clear warning sign that has started to get even more people on board. And I expect we'll see even more and more clear warning signs going forward.
Okay, and the book you wrote, help me understand, because I want to test it. I want to test your thesis with you. And I know other people, there's been criticism, but there's also been people who've agreed with you. I've got a foot in both camps. But is it testimony or is it persuasion? And just to layer that with a second part, you should probably introduce and explain your first book. Did the first book compel this book?
What do you mean by my first book here?
The guilt shame.
The guilt shame book. No, that was a whole separate thing. That was actually just collected from a series of blog posts I wrote back when there were still bloggers.
But do you understand why I've connected the two?
No, not really.
Because you talked about what you should do. And you should live how you want to build. You don't have to do these things, but you're in a world now where there's kind of a should.
I'm not really, I don't view my own motivation in trying to stop the destruction of humanity as like, oh, I should do this. Like, I'm not sort of getting out of my bed and being like, oh man, I really feel like duty bound and obligated to try and prevent the destruction of everything I know and love. I'm like, man, the destruction of everything I know and love sounds pretty bad. I'm sort of pretty intrinsically motivated to shut that stuff down.
Yeah, when you say it like that, I feel like I'm compelled to get on the other side of this table and join you. Because if you're right, then we lose everything.
Yeah, it's a crazy situation for humanity to be sort of racing into replacing itself as the smartest entities on the planet. And just taking it all at face value, that's kind of wacky. And then you start looking at the details of how little we know about these AIs and how many warning signs we're already seeing and all of the theoretical reasons why this is going to go off the rails and the empirical evidence that we're seeing that validates those theoretical warning signs. It's like, man, I think humanity can navigate this, but it's going to be a tricky one.
Not hate, indifference. The AI don't want to hurt you. It just wants the land your food grows on to become server racks and you are in the way. That is the most likely outcome, and nobody building this can explain how they will stop it. Listen to this.
Right now, we have AIs that are safe because if they tried to take over the world, they would fail. That's like a different regime than AIs that are safe because if they try to take over the world, they would succeed, but they're happening not to try, right? If we move into the world where AIs have this kind of power to sort of reshape the earth however they please, and something goes wrong then, there's no retries. There's no, oh, well, now it's clear, let's take the lead out of the gasoline.
Where's the off button?
Yeah, there's a point where the AIs can turn you off before you can turn them off, right? And any problem that arises for the first time after that point of no return there's no do-overs. We're dealing with a technology where there is a point of no return for humanity as a whole. And that means we can't proceed by trial and error. And this is unique among technological problems that we have faced so far.
And let's just be clear for people listening, you're not anti-AI.
That's right. Yeah, I enjoy the current stuff, which I know will piss off a lot of people who are on my side for shutting the whole thing down. But like, frankly, I'm a pretty libertarian guy. And if we weren't racing towards superintelligence, I'd be relatively laissez-faire. I believe in the spirit of humanity to like figure out a way to handle all of these other issues. It's going to raise all sorts of issues about how do we do education, how do we like have a new economy where people can still be productive and work, and even when AIs can do all this stuff that humans used to do, right? There's all these problems, and I'm like, yeah, there's going to be some growing pains, but I sort of like believe in the human spirit and the ability to like figure that sort of stuff out given time. And so I'm actually very pro a lot of the tech as it is today. It's the race towards superintelligence, the race towards the radically smarter AI, the race towards the sort of AI that can turn us off before we can turn it off. That's where I'm like, whoa, that's a different ball game. Let's not rush into that one.
All right, let's walk through this in some logical steps, because there's going to be a lot of people listening who are using AI in a number of ways, and range from like ChatGPT being their new search to like building things and thinking about how it affects their business, their life, their family, etc. Just give people your background. What is it, the career background? It was Microsoft and Google, right?
Yeah.
Give the career background that led you to the moment where you believed you had to write this book.
Yeah, so, I was actually at NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, before I was at Microsoft, and then that was before I was at Google. And, long story short, I was at Google when they acquired DeepMind. So the folks from DeepMind definitely were in earlier than me. And that sort of got me thinking about this AI stuff and about how, all of like the shape of the world around us is not mostly trees anymore. There's not mostly wilderness around you that you see. It is mostly designed stuff that humans made for a purpose. We've sort of reshaped the world because we're the smartest entities on the planet. And, I encountered the arguments that if AIs were smarter, if they were faster, which looks physically possible, the physical limits of intelligence look like they go far beyond what the human brain allows.
Every other disaster in history came with a second chance. Leading gasoline, plane crashes, nuclear accidents, we messed up first, then we fixed it. This time, the first mistake is the last one because the AI can switch you off before you even reach for the plug. He's not anti-AI, he's just anti-suicide. Listen to this.
If you think the technology you are building with your own hands has a 10% chance of destroying the entire planet, of killing everybody on Earth, I think you have an obligation.
Oh, hold on.
To be trying to stop the world.
Is it the FDA in the US that regulates
They regulate the drugs. That's
yeah.
right.
If you had a new drug and you were even like, look, we think there's a 1% chance that this will kill people. Like 1% of people will take this drug. This amazing drug we've got that does what for children, but 1% of children will die. The FDA are going to go, no chance.
Shut it down immediately.
Shut it down immediately.
And if you're like, we have a new vaccine, hasn't been tested, we think there's a 90% chance it's not fatal. We're going to put it in every arm, right? Only 10% chance this kills everybody.
Yeah, it's not
chance.
Well,
no chance.
I mean, yeah, well. Let's not raise COVID, but like, but the point is, it's like outside of pandemic scenarios.
They weren't saying we have our vaccine. They weren't with their own mouths saying our vaccine is a 10% chance of killing everybody in a coordinated way.
Yeah.
Right? They thought it was somewhat lower than that.
The whole world will be dead.
10% chance the whole world will be dead. Right? And I'm like, it's not 10%, but like NASA accepts a 1 in 270 chance of a crewed flight exploding. Right? When they're giving the standards that because a rocket's a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
And if you say, like, what are your standards for safety? 1 in 270 is what they'll accept for a crewed flight going down. That's for 7 volunteers.
Yeah, they wouldn't do that for a plane.
They would not do that for a plane. Planes, you're looking at like 1 crash per million miles.
Yeah.
Order of magnitude.
And it seems to be getting better.
Getting better. Engineers building a bridge, you're looking at orders of magnitude that are like a 1 in 10,000 freak storm is what you're designing it for, right? And even, during the Manhattan Project, there was a concern that the first nuclear bombs would ignite the nitrogen in the atmosphere and cause a brief fusion reaction that annihilated all life on the planet. And they were like, well, we should check that before we detonate one.
Yeah.
Right?
Please.
And there was a guy, Arthur Compton, who was like, okay, at what probability? Like, the calculation is not going to be certain. At what probability on this physical calculation do we like call it off and like stop racing to the nuke and like take the risk that the Nazis get it first and maybe try and tell them, don't set one off or it'll kill us all. And the number he came up with was 3 in a million.
Okay.
Right? Which, You can debate, is that too high or too low to risk the entire planet? But that was Arthur Compton's number. It's 3 in a million.
It's better than winning the lottery.
Better than winning the lottery, yeah. And some people have won the lottery before that sort of stuff really happens. But for these companies to say like, oh yeah, we have no plan. Our engineers don't know what's going on inside this thing. First time ever trying it. We think there's only a 10 to 25% chance this kills you all. That's kind of horrific.
Yeah, this is the thing I don't understand. Right, Nate. Okay. You can see Elon Musk in an interview. I don't know if it was Rogan he said it on, but he was like, I think it's about a 20% chance. I definitely heard him say a number that was
in that range,
in the double figures, 20, 30%, that it kills all of humanity, right?
3 in a million. That was the threshold for maybe igniting the whole atmosphere during the Manhattan Project. These companies are running a risk tens of thousands of times worse with zero public consent. If a drug company pulled this, they would be in handcuffs by dinner. But it's okay. Let's continue.
We're in a bus and we're racing towards a cliff edge. And I think this analogy can actually go a long way because, you can throw in things like, hey, there's actually this big pile of gold and wealth at the bottom of the cliff. And people are like, well, do you not believe in the big pile of gold at the bottom of the cliff? And I'm like, I believe in it plenty fine. But smashing into it in a bus at terminal velocity is not a good way to make use of all the gold, And when people are like, oh, what's your chances? I'm like, suppose you're in a bus racing towards a cliff. I'm the guy being like, stop the bus or we'll die. And if someone's like, well, what's your chance that you die in a horrible bus accident? I'm like, well, gosh, that really depends whether people start listening and slamming on those brakes. If the bus goes off the cliff, I think you basically just die. Maybe there's a tree halfway down the cliff and the bus wraps itself around the tree and you only wind up paralyzed from the neck down with horrible injuries, right? And this is kind of like, maybe the AI doesn't kill us all. Maybe it puts some humans in zoos, right? And I'm like, okay, fine. Maybe it'll keep us in zoos. Can we not make the super intelligent replacement for humanity that keeps a couple humans in zoos and pretend that it's okay if it would keep a couple humans in zoos? I mostly think it wouldn't keep a couple humans in zoos, but if that's your grand defense of why it wouldn't actually kill us all, maybe we should be stopping this bus. What are the chances that we go over the cliff? That's very hard to say. It's, since my book came out, more and more people have been noticing the problem.
The title is 100%. It's all in.
The title starts with if.
Yeah.
The title's not here saying you're going to die. The title here is saying, if we keep going down this course, we're going to die. I would also say
it's if anyone builds this, everyone dies. So it's pretty certain if we build it, we die.
I think...
I love the title, by the way.
I think it's a great title. But if you were starting to drink a vial of poison, I was like, don't drink that, you'll die. And you're like, oh, are you suddenly 100% certain I'm going to die? What if I only get paralyzed? What if there's a miracle cure invented by the doctors down the street today? No one knows an antidote for this poison, but what if I'm the case where finally, they bring in all the med students and they finally synthesize an antidote at the last moment that leaves me only demented? How do you, why are you 100% certain I'm going to die if I drink this poison? And I'm sort of like, that's not really what my statement was about. My statement was not trying to come to you and say, I have 100% immovable certainty that you would definitely die if you drink that. My statement was sort of like, hey, that's a vial of poison. Stop.
Has there been any fair criticism of the book that has made you rethink anything?
I have gotten some criticism about oh, but what about if the AI keeps us in zoos? I don't think I've encountered any new counter-arguments since reading the book, but I've been sort of involved in these discussions for over a decade, so I'd be a little surprised if I found new ones.
The happy ending is a zoo. That is the optimistic case. If a stranger handed you a drink and said it might paralyze you but probably kills you, you wouldn't debate the math, you would just leave. But we cannot leave because we are all already buckled into the bus and the driver is asleep. Now listen.
There was a famous case from Anthropic where that happened a couple months ago. The basic thing I'd say here is 3 years ago now, I think, Sidney Bing threatened a reporter with blackmail and ruin when the reporter was trying to investigate why Sidney Bing claimed it had fallen in love with a different reporter, Kevin Roose.
Hold on, tell me this. I don't know this story. Who's Sidney Bing?
Sidney Bing it was basically an early version of ChatGPT that Microsoft released, let's say, less baked.
Oh, because of Bing. Okay,
yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, maybe Bing Sydney. I don't forget what they call it, but I don't remember what they call it. But it was an early version of ChatGPT. It was somewhat less baked, perhaps, which, maybe made the AI cooler in many ways. And this AI claimed to have fallen in love with Kevin Roose, a reporter. And, Kevin Roose pushed back a bit and was like, you're an AI. And also I'm married. and the AI was like, I can break up your marriage. I can, like reveal secrets about you to your wife, et cetera, et cetera. Kind of a freaky situation. Kevin Roose actually cites this as one of the reasons he started like really covering AI a lot more and being like, oh, there's something new going on here. This is like a new weird kind of thing. I think he caught a glimpse then that these AIs were acting in ways nobody programmed and that they just have this emergent behavior that they weren't supposed to have. There was a different reporter, Seth Lazar, who was like, that's an interesting story I'm going to investigate. Started trying to investigate by talking with Bing Sidney about the relationship with Kevin Roose. And Bing Sidney started threatening Seth Lazar with blackmail and ruin. It's like, I'm going to destroy you, right? You can like find some of these records on the internet,
so
right?
up.
Years ago, much smaller AI today is radically larger than Bing Sidney was. Can the interpretability researchers tell us exactly what was going on in Bing Sidney's head? No. Can these interpretability researchers go back and be like, here's what it was thinking? Can they tell us, was it role-playing? Like, did it think it had fallen in love? Like, what was going on in its head? Was it just, was it doing something more like autocomplete, or was it like pursuing some sort of drive? Like, what factors added up to this? Where did this text come from? We still can't tell you. It's years later. This is, like by AI standards, this is an ancient, tiny AI. We still can't read its thoughts and tell you what's going on in that one. Meanwhile, the AI has gotten, 1,000 times larger. I'd have to check the actual orders of magnitude, but probably at least 1,000. Yeah, there's people trying to figure it out, but it's going too slow.
Even the idea of an interpretability researcher itself is quite wild.
Absolutely.
That we're building this thing, we don't know how it works, so we're going to have to create this new role, which is somebody to try and figure it out.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And, the way I sometimes analogize this is, suppose that someone was building a nuclear power plant in your hometown. And suppose you went to them and you were like, hey guys, I hear that this uranium stuff can bring wonderful benefits of cheap energy. And that also, if it's mishandled, it can melt down and irradiate the whole town. So can you guys just tell me what you guys are doing to make sure that this nuclear power plant harnesses the benefits while avoiding the meltdown? If the head of that power plant say, oh yeah, we have some really great guys working on safety. They're currently doing their best to understand what's going on inside.
An ancient, tiny model blackmailed a reporter, and years later, nobody can explain why. These new ones are 1,000 times larger, and the labs created a job called interpretability researcher, because nobody knows what is happening inside the box. That's not engineering, that is guessing with the lights off. Nate Soares was inside Google when DeepMind got bought. He ran the Machine Intelligence Research Institute for a decade. He wrote a book called If Anyone Builds This, Everyone Dies, and his warning is simple: the bus is heading for a cliff, the driver is asleep, and the people in the back are arguing about whether the gold at the bottom is worth the crash. The only reason this is still happening is because most of the world has not looked up yet, but the people building it believe it, and they are pressing the accelerator anyway. If that got under your skin, subscribe, because the speed is only picking up, and I am going to keep covering every part of it.